though I was born in 1999, I have to admit, growing up, this was my horror icon growing up. Yes, I had like the Saw movies, but again, I was like 3 or 4. But like, as a famous horror icon, I would probably have to say Ghostface takes that title for me growing up. And these being the movies that I grew up watching with like horror slashers when I was sneaking around trying to watch them at least. Scream. Released in 1996. Scream came out. This is my new series I'm reviewing. I'm going to review the Scream series. I hope you guys are excited for this because Scream, like I said, I grew up with this era. Like, I mean, yes, like, it came out before I was born, but when I was growing up, this was that horror slasher that was always on. This was the one that I recognized the most. The Ghostface mask, all of that stuff. This kind of stuff was the stuff I liked growing up when I was trying to sneak around and watch them. Then I learned about Jason and Chucky and then Leatherface, and that terrified me. But Ghostface is where my, like, trying to sneak in and watch those movies and HBO and trying to click those channels at late at night, whatever. It was great times, and it all started with this movie, Scream. Now, before getting really dive deep into the movie Scream, I just have to talk about how important this movie was, the background behind it. I mean, like I said, Ghostface, I mean, get rid of our top 3 main horror icons. Jason, Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers. Those are our 3 headliners. Then we get like Leatherface, Chucky, and I would put Ghostface up there for sure. When this movie came out, actually, slashers were dead. They were becoming straight to DVD kind of movies. They were forgotten. In the mid-90s, nothing was slasher-like. Freddy was dying down, basically, and they weren't making money. Freddy was completely dying down, and who also, Wes Craven, who made Nightmare on Elm Street, also made this movie. So, apparently in 1995, Hollywood, there was a script going around, and this script was the Scream script. It was a good story, but no one wanted to tackle it. And then Wes Craven said, I want to make this my next project. And so in 1996, we did receive this film, and obviously from that point onward, horror films, slashers morally, changed. This movie might be really good to a lot of people, and it's a very entertaining movie for sure. But you have to make sure to recognize that this movie, without this movie, slashers would have never made a comeback, at least not in the 90s. Obviously, one day someone was going to make a slasher, and then slashers would return, and obviously in these nowadays, we have paranormal movies, we have really smart horror films. Horror movies nowadays are just way more like films more than just horror movies. I think a lot of us can agree with that. But in the 90s, we had 90s stars making a Wes Craven film and being a new horror icon. This was the prime, like, biggest hit horror movie in the time. I was told by my mom and many other people, when this movie came out, people were racing to see this movie, and it actually wasn't, like, the biggest, big hit, but it had that word-of-mouth kind of movie, and obviously it spawned a franchise, and in the 90s, it spawned many rip-offs, stuff like that. I mean, obviously the most famous one is I Know What You Did Last Summer, which was released 1 year later after this movie, and another set of 90 stars. There was a bunch of just cheesy slasher horror movies, all trying to be meta comedy like this movie. The basic storyline is set in Woodsboro, and we have our main character named Sidney Prescott, who is having to deal with the trauma of 1 year ago losing her mom to a murder/rape, and now with a new murderer in the town murdering high school students called Ghostface. Now she must learn the truths about her past and survive the next few days. Obviously, the most famous thing about this movie is the opening scene. The first 10 minutes is arguably, and is recalled to most, the best opening to a horror film ever. And honestly, I agree. The opening 10 minutes is really good. The editing, the movement of the cinematography, the camera, Drew Barrymore herself, because the movie came out, Drew Barrymore was in the mid-90s, so everyone's like, ooh, Drew Barrymore. She was on the poster. She was advertised as the main star. In the first 10 minutes, they pulled a Psycho, except obviously really early in the movie, and they killed her, and it is a brutal scene.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
What did you say?
I want to know who I'm talking to.
That's That's not what you said.
Really, the true horrors of this opening scene is seeing like her getting this phone call, what's your favorite scary movie, and learning the tension is building of this entire scene. The opening scene is literally the best scene in my opinion, and it's obviously the most famous scene because it started it all. Like, this is where it started. This is where the meta came in, and the meta comedy about how each character is talking about slasher movies when they're in a slasher movie. That's what makes this movie so clever and why it was so famous at the time, because horror movies didn't do that. Obviously, horror movies were dying, slashers especially. So when this movie came out and had this new meta comedy, like, hey, we're winking at the camera, but really we're in the movie kind of deal, it changed horror movies. It changed a lot. Like, directors were like, we could do that. We could, like, it changed so much. And it all, honestly, that first 10 minutes is all you have to watch, and you know the kind of movie this is.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
No, it's not! No, it's not! It was Jason!
Afraid not? No way.
Listen, it was Jason! I saw that movie 20 goddamn times!
Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel. I'm afraid that was a wrong answer.
Besides that amazing opening scene, though, the rest of the movie, it's just a really, really entertaining movie. I'll tell you right now, this movie is not like an A+ movie. It's a classic horror movie and stuff, but overall, it's a very, very fun movie. The number one thing I can talk just great about it, like, first things first, the pacing. It's an hour and 51 minutes, and it just goes by. Like, I mean, this movie is so fast-moving, quick dialogue, actors all running around, pretty faces, it's got the energy, it's got the horror, scary scenes. This movie flies by. The pacing, into my opinion, is the best thing on this movie. It is such a you can literally watch this movie and it'd be over like that. It's like, where did my past 2 hours go? I don't know, because watching this movie, it has that energy, and that's really due to the script, the acting, and of course the directing by, rest in peace, Wes Craven. Man, it sucks that he's gone, but I mean, this is, I would say, obviously Nightmare on Elm Street left more of like a impact because it was the 80s, it was Freddy Krueger, the dreamlike, but I could honestly say this first Scream movie, it might just be his peak of masterpiece, because again, the directing, the editing is so good throughout this entire movie. The good, fast-paced dialogue from all these actors, especially, I can never say her name right, Neve Campbell, Neve Campbell. Again, I've said her name a lot wrong. I should have just looked up an interview and saw her name. But she, as Sidney Prescott, she's a top 5 Last Girl. She is a famous character, Sidney Prescott. If you think of that name, you think of Scream, obviously, and her performance, Neve Campbell, as her is fantastic. If I'm saying her name wrong too, go ahead and just comment below, because I probably know I'm saying it wrong. Besides her, Courtney Cox is great. David Arquette as Dewey is really cool. Even though he's kind of a nerdy, geeky-like cop, he's really cool. And I can never say his name right, but Skeet Ulrich, who plays Billy, yeah, he, as a kid, I really thought that was Johnny Depp. The entire time I was like, is that Johnny Depp? As growing up, I was like, that's Johnny Depp. Wasn't Johnny Depp, obviously, but he's a really good actor in this movie. He is creepy, he's unsettling, and you're like, you're the murderer, dude. And obviously, Billy's not just the only murderer. We also have Stu, who also is played by Matthew Lillard, aka Shaggy. I love him. I love his energy. I love just him. He is so awesome in this movie. Everyone talks about how over-dramatic he is and overacted he is in the third act. I semi-agree, but he brings it. He brings that intense, just action, like horror, intense stuff. Like his performance, it works for me a bunch. I love Matthew Lillard throughout this entire movie. 3 rules that you need to follow in a horror movie: you can never have sex, no drinking, no alcohol, and whatever you do, never say, "I'll be right back." I love that scene because, again, the meta comedy, and I really just enjoy that kind of stuff. I enjoy the meta-ness. Obviously, with 2020, this kind of meta is really, really used in a lot of comedies today. So in the 90s, again, this movie, it was like horror, meta comedy. what are we watching here? And then with this famous icon Ghostface, it was just a really cool aspect of all of it working together. And again, the performances of all these actors, like I said, all of them just fit their role. And Courtney Cox, I've heard a lot, like in the first movie, no one likes her because she's more of the bitch, and the rest of the movie, she becomes more of a great heroine, whatever. But really, she is a slimeball in this movie. It's like, she really is just that character that doesn't care. She wants that new story. At the very end, she kind of turns it around by kind of saving Sydney from Stu and Billy for a second. But besides that, I mean, she's pretty much a bitch this entire movie. Now, speaking of that third act, like I said about the pacing, the movie's an hour and 51 minutes. When we get to our final setting, this house, which is Stu's house, there's 50 minutes left in this damn movie, and the third act is just bloody, intense, exciting, obviously revealing of Stu and Billy, and I love the scene where they explain. I know a lot of people hate when villains explain to their characters, but I just love it when you get to learn that Billy is the son of the mom that the dad screwing Sydney's mom, making his parents divorce. It's actually a really good motivation. I love how he's talking about, I need a good motivation, right? I mean, he does it really good, too. It's creepy. It's like, this character is dark and disturbing. And of course, you got Stu in the background just like, you gotta have a sequel. You gotta. I'll be right back. Ah! Like, he is so over the top. I love it. I love Stu. And my favorite line from Stu, hands down. Hello?
Oh, Stu. What's your motive? Billy's got one. The police are on their way. What are you gonna tell them?
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive.
I'm gonna rip you up, you bitch! Just like your fucking mother!
You gotta find me first, you pansy-ass mama's boy!
Fuck! Fucking hit me with the phone, dick!
I love that scene because first off, the music is building. We don't know where Sydney is. She's on the phone, and then he gets hit with the phone. Cool little fact too. That actually wasn't planned. When he threw that phone, he hit Matthew Lillard in the head, and that was his genuine reaction, so they left it in the movie. I am grateful they did, because it adds so much, like, just intensity in powerful moment, because it's, like, it's intense. They're looking for Sydney, and he hits someone, and it's like, he hit me with a phone, dick! Like, it just, I don't know. Again, the editing, the sound, it all interweaves in this movie. And again, the pacing, that's why it's so great. Again, I really just love this movie because of the pacing, the editing, all that kind of stuff. Then, of course, we get our great little ending of her defeating Billy and Stu, and of course, they live. Again, the movie, it's just a fun, exciting, entertainment, comedy / horror movie. And if I had any major issues, my biggest issue is, and I don't want to be like a 2020 kid, I don't know how much this movie is going to hold up. Watching it last night, I could notice, like, this movie was impactful for the 90s. If this movie came out today, it would get good reviews, but it wouldn't, like, set any stages. For this movie being the first one in the 90s, that's why it's such an impactful movie. Will it hold up, though? I'm not sure. There's some dialogue throughout this movie that doesn't hold up. There are some references that don't hold up. And that's where the movie, I'm scared in 10 more years, it's gonna not be nowhere near as good as it is now or before. So if you grew up in the 90s, this movie's very impactful. For me, though, watching it, I'm like, it's a little dated, I have to be honest. And I actually did watch this movie with someone that's never seen Scream. This person promised me they did not know who the killers were. They knew it was Billy and Stu because throughout the entire movie, they just act a little different more than others. And there's also a great scene that actually I didn't notice. In the very beginning, they're sitting they're sitting down there eating lunch, and they're both talking to each other, and Stu's like, well, I didn't kill her, and Billy's like looking at him, he's like, I didn't say you did, and then he's like, he looks at him in a way you're like, hey man, shut up, you're saying too much. My friend is right. From that moment, if you really can think about it, you can tell it's Billy and Stu, which kind of sucks, but again, the movie still is directed well. The acting, it all just fits. It's perfectly casted for this first movie. The movie has energy. It's exciting. It's got your good scary moments. Of course, the opening scene is the scene you're going to remember and probably talk about and people reference today, do sketches on. It is the opening scene of Scream. This movie is impactful for horror fans, horror movies in general in the 90s. It saved slashers, it changed the game, and I respect it for that. I have a few issues and all, but it's one of those movies, if it's on TV, I can 1000% watch it. It is super enjoyable, and I definitely recommend Scream. I am gonna give Scream an A-. Even though I gave an A-, I would be okay with saying calling this movie a classic. It is. It really is. It's a classic movie. What's your favorite scary movie? And obviously, I love, just a little minor side note, the movie Scary Movie. I love the what's up. And every time I see this movie and they're on the phone, I sometimes think about what's up, even though it's a spoof movie and all, but it's still funny. So tomorrow I will be releasing my Scream 2 review. That will be coming up next, guys. Hope you guys enjoy this next series. It's a very quick series. I just wanted to, some of you have suggested some really good movies, but I just felt like doing Scream. Someone suggested a horror movie, and I was like, I like horror movie. I like Scream. I'll do Scream. If I do Scream 1, though, I gotta do it sequels. So yes, tomorrow will be Scream 2. Hope you guys enjoyed this review and this video. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye, everyone.